Welcome back to another episode of Inside the Review Room. My name is Helena. This week we're stepping away from stats and strategy because it's Father's Day, and for many athletes, that relationship runs deeper than fans will ever see. In sports, being someone's son isn't just a personal fact, it can be a career narrative. A last name can open doors, but it can also cast a long, heavy shadow. Today we're diving into the weight of legacy, the emotional pressure that comes with following a father's footsteps, and what it means to build or break that generational cycle. But beyond the sentimental highlight reels, there's a real, often overlooked issue. Generational legacy in sports isn't just emotional, it's mental, cultural, and systemic. This episode isn't just about famous fathers and their kids in general, but primarily their sons. It's about how that legacy affects identity, how pressure shapes performance, and how leagues are slowly waking up to the mental toll it takes. And before we get started, I just wanted to say I am repping my own brand today. This custom hoodie was made by a dope custom clothing company on Amazon. They do everything from hoodies and t-shirts to mugs, all made to order with your design. The quality's on point, print came out clean, obviously, and the whole process was super smooth. If you're looking to create your own merch or want something personalized, maybe get data custom, definitely check them out. Links in the description. And now let's get started. So let's start with Steph Curry. Most people see the flashy handles, the deep threes, the MVP trophies, but long before Steph was Steph, he was Dell Curry's son. Dell was a great shooter in his own right, but his son's path wasn't guaranteed. Steph was often overlooked by major schools, labeled too weak, too small, but despite growing up around the game, he still had to earn his place, not just as an athlete, but as a man carving out his own name. But as we know now, he didn't just carry the family name, he elevated it. Then there's Ken Griffey Jr. and Ken Griffey Sr. They made history as the first father and son to play on the same MLB team, and it sounds like a fairy tale, but behind the story was a teenager dealing with pressure, identity, and personal pain. Jr. later admitted to battling depression as a teen, and at one point it got so bad that he attempted to end his own life. He cited frequent arguments with his father, pressure in both his baseball and home life, and a growing sense of isolation after moving away at 18. He says, "It seemed like everybody was yelling at me in baseball, then I came home and everyone was yelling at me there." The incident became a turning point. Both Griffey and his father said it changed their relationship for the better. Still, the fact that we almost lost a Hall of Fame career before it even began is a sobering reminder of what pressure can do to young athletes. Even access and privilege don't eliminate pressure, they often magnify it. And only recently have leagues like the NBA and MLB begun funding programs to support mental health at youth level because early pressure leads to early burnout. Now fast forward to today. Let's talk about Bronny James. He was born into fame, he's the son of one of the greatest players to ever live, and he had no choice. The spotlight found him early. High school highlights went viral, NIL deals came, and he's not just a player, he's a brand before he's even declared to the NBA draft. But this past year, when Bronny went into cardiac arrest during practice, it shook everything. It reminded people that this is just a kid, a son, a human being under extreme pressure. And when you're LeBron's son, the comparisons never stop and the weight never really lifts. And speaking of Bronny and LeBron James, you should probably check out my LeBron and Stephen A. Smith confrontation video. It's literally about Bronny James, so it's definitely worth checking it out, and I'll link it below. On the flip side, we have players like Patrick Mahomes, whose dad played in the MLB. Patrick carved out a new legacy on a different field. He grew up in locker rooms watching professionals, learning how to carry yourself in pressure-filled space. That upbringing helped but also set a bar that few kids could ever live up to. And same with Vladimir Guerrero Jr. He came into MLB as Vlad's kid, expected to hit bombs and dominate. Now he's an all-star in his own right, but the expectations were written before he ever even swung a bat. The newer generation is navigating fame before performance. Leagues now encourage athletes to build their brand, but branding can create pressure before athletes have even found their identity. The NCAA and NBA programs have begun hiring in-house sports psychologists, partially in response to the emotional toll that we've seen in legacy athletes. Of course, not every story is about following in someone's footsteps. Sometimes the father is the driving force. Earl Woods molded Tiger, Richard Williams believed Venus and Serena would change tennis, and they did. But that type of parenting, intense, vision-driven, all-in, comes with pressure. It's not always gentle, and it's often overwhelming. And there's a thin line between passion and projection, between wanting greatness for your child and wanting it through them. What's shifting now is how we evaluate father-driven ambition. There's more awareness and more criticism about whether these environments are empowering or emotionally taxing. For example, after King Richard, the Williams sisters clarified that their father's vision didn't always come without conflict. Youth coaching models in the US now include training in emotional intelligence and trauma-informed mentorship. And Then there's Kobe Bryant, the ultimate girl dad. Kobe was vocal about the joy and pride he felt in raising his daughters, especially Gianna, who many believed would carry on his basketball legacy. Their bond was visible, tangible, inspiring, and he wasn't trying to mold her into him, he was guiding her to become herself. Their tragic passing reminded the world that legacy isn't always about stats or wins, sometimes it's just about presence, purpose, and love. Add to that figures like Layla Ali, daughter of Muhammad Ali, who carried her father's name into the ring with pride, but also carved her own lane in a male-dominated sport. And then there's stories of loss. Athletes who lost their fathers too soon, like Michael Jordan, whose father was murdered before one of the biggest stretches of MJ's career. Jordan dedicated so many of his biggest moments to his dad, and the pain became his fuel, but the grief was always there. And now think about Brett Favre, who played just one day after his father passed, delivering one of the best performances of his life. It was iconic, emotional, but also, what does it take mentally to even show up that night? These stories share a theme, the emotional weight that comes with legacy. For every celebration on Father's Day, there's also a son or daughter, child, somewhere feeling the pressure to live up to something or someone. Some athletes find strength in that relationship, while others battle guilt, grief, or identity loss. And it all intersects with mental health. The pressure to carry a last name, the struggle to be your own man, the fear of failure, not just for yourself, but for your father's image. In the world of sports, however, given it is Men's Mental Health Month, we'll speak on behalf of men's sports. We often glorify toughness, legacy, and lineage, but we rarely talk about the emotional toll of living in someone's footsteps. Father-son dynamics are one of the most under-researched areas in athlete psychology, but studies from the Journal of Applied Sports Psychology show that perceived parental pressure is often one of the leading factors in athlete burnout and performance anxiety. Organizations like the NCAA and NFLPA are starting to respond with mental health access and education, not just for players, but for families, because legacy isn't just created on the court, it's shaped at home. So this Father's Day, remember, behind every junior on a jersey, there's a story. A name isn't just sewn onto a jersey, it's carried every single game. Some athletes carry it with pride, others with pain, but most carry it with both. So here's to the fathers who paved the way, to the sons finding their own lane, and to the men who are rewriting what legacy looks like, not just in stats, but in strength, vulnerability, and healing. So thanks again for joining me on this episode of Inside the Review Room. Be sure to check out my links in bio for your custom shirts. And we'll be back next week with more stories that shape the game and the people who play it. Until then, take care of your mind, your people, and your legacy. And happy Father's Day.
Hey, yo, the mirror don't lie. If you want the truth, don't close your eyes.